Hey, what's up? This is Harry Wagner from Harry's Situations, and today we're here with my friend Mitch Bergstrom and his Ford Explorer Sport Trac. So don't see a lot of these built as rock crawlers, but Mitch is a fixture here in Reno in the rock crawling scene, and he's always had Fords as long as I know him.
So it's my fifth one I built. My first one I bought kind of semi-built because it was about 9 years ago when my fabricating skills were a little less than they are now. So I bought a semi-built Bronco 2, mini Bronco that had a 4.0 swap and had a couple cool things, James Duff lift kit and stuff like that, but it was still twin traction beam front suspension. Put some lockers and 35s, wheeled it for a year, wanted something more. Built a first gen Explorer with a Dana 44 solid axle, 8.8 rear. After a couple years of that, I wanted something with 1 ton, so I built a V8 Explorer, a 5.0 with Super Duty 1 tons, 5.0 V8, 3-linked in the front and leafed in the rear. Unfortunately, had an incident on Rubicon where we crashed that one, and it was not salvageable. So in the meantime, I built a little Ford Ranger beater with Super Duty 1 tons, 40-inch stickies, dual cases, kind of homemade cases for a Ranger 1356 Borg Warner cases. And then while I was kind of wheeling the Ranger for a year or so, in the downtime, I came across this thing and thought it would be a good candidate for a build. I still had the axles and everything from my V8 Explorer, and it's fully box frame front to rear, like 2x8 in some places, pretty beefy frame. Has a factory V8 with a 6-speed transmission, and the first gear in the tranny is like a 420 to 1 first gear, so it's really good for crawling. It was a 2-wheel drive factory truck, so we did a divorced Atlas on it. So this is my first divorce case setup I had to build, but it's been working good for just about a year now. Or actually, yeah, we built it right before a Moab trip about a year ago, and had quite a few runs on it. Because I did run a 205 in this for the first 6 months before I did an Atlas, and it was it did the job. I just didn't like the packaging of the 205 as much as it hung down and as heavy as it was. So the divorced Atlas gave me almost 5 inches of ground clearance where it hung down. So a lot better packaging.
This video has been brought to you by Nitto Tire USA. I not only run Nittos on my Jeep, but also on my Ram tow rig, on my big Ford on 40s, on my Tracker rock crawler. Nitto makes tires in a variety of sizes and different applications for everything from drift cars to side-by-sides. Check out all their offerings at nittotire.com. This has a 4.6 liter versus the 5 liter in the Explorer, right?
4.6, so it's a modular motor. They're pretty wide, but lots of aftermarket support from the Mustang guys. This one's stock. I haven't done anything except for build 2.5-inch exhaust custom all the way back from the headers or the manifolds. But yeah, it runs good. They have about 100 more horsepower and torque than the 5.0 does. So kind of makes all the power mid-range, but with the gearing, you don't really need it for crawling. So it works well.
And you have friends that have Jeeps, you have friends that have Toyotas. I know you guys are always fabbing at your shop, working together, hanging out in the evenings. How much more difficult was it to build a Sport Trac than to build, say, a 4Runner or a JK or something like that?
So this one wasn't a ton more difficult. It's all, of course, custom fab. The links are from Rough Stuff. You buy the kit and make it fit where it fits. But being a 2-wheel drive truck, this one was pretty easy. Packaging was a lot easier with the divorce case and the 3-link. There was a lot more room. On rigs in the past, such as the Ranger, the Bronco 2, and my first Explorer, with 0 aftermarket support, you can't just buy a 4-to-1 kit to put in your T-case or 4.7 kit. So literally had to cut a T-case in half and make an adapter plate and an intermediate shaft to make dual cases to get the gearing out of those. So it's a lot more work, but I kind of pride myself in that a little bit, having something that stands out. It gets a lot of attention, and it works well. I mean, it's also got the comforts. It's got heated leather seats, and I got a family now with a 3-year-old, so riding around in it, it's pretty comfortable. Cruising through Fordyce and Rubicon, the buggy guys are like, "Oh, I bet you like your AC right now."
Right. So the transfer case is divorced. You are not. You are married. So, and like you said, have a kid, and Yeah, there's room for all of you. There's room for your gear. You like to do weekend trips. I mean, around Reno, there's so many places to wheel, right? Where
all the time.
Slick Rock, Ford Ice, Rubicon, like you're saying, Barrett, where we can go camping and you take the whole family and go with your friends. And the buggy guys are strapping coolers to the roof and stuff.
Yeah, and that was me and my Ranger. It was a 2-seater, no bed space, a Dove, homemade bed. So if I ever took that to Ford Ice or Rubicon, it was a trip where I left the wife and kid at home, and sometimes you need to get everybody out there, and it's worked really well. There's downfalls of having a full bodied, such a big rig that's such a long wheelbase, but it works well in most places. So.
What is the wheelbase?
Ended up being around 133 inches.
Okay, but I guess with the packaging, with you think of like a flat fender or a CJ5, you're not going to fit a divorce transfer case and something like that, right? So you have plenty of drivetrain length to work with. Yeah,
the drivetrain length, and then also nowadays, like the JLs and the even the new JTs, the Gladiators, they got a really long wheelbase stock, and most of those are on 35s and 37s. So some of the trails like Rubicon and stuff, I would imagine the lines used to be kind of around 100 wheelbase. So I would imagine they're going to kind of start changing with a lot more of the long wheelbase rigs being built. So
these Super Duty axles you mentioned were out of your last Explorer, and what are you running for, like gears or axle shafts or lockers?
So everything is Yukon gear and axle, 538s in the diffs, the chromos, inners and outers, 35 spline in the front. It was a unit bearing 30 spline, so I did have the unit bearings machined out to accept 35 spline with the Yukon hardcore hubs, Grizzly lockers front and rear. I did the Nitro Excalibur solid U joints. So they're similar to a super joint, chromoly one piece, no needle bearings. So I haven't had any issues with any of that stuff. It's holding up, and hopefully it continues to, because she weighed in pretty heavy. So
what's it weigh?
6880.
Yeah, so that's comparable to like my Ford truck that has a big block and big steel bumpers and all those things.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
But similar Super Duty axles, 40-inch Nitto Trail Grapplers, so
yeah.
A lot of similarities. What generation are the axles? Are these like 05 up? We hear about Super Duties, they got bigger brakes and bigger unit bearings.
These are actually 03. So my Ranger had 08 axles, so they do come factory with 35 spline stubs and bigger unit bearings, bigger U joints. They actually can accept the 1550 U joints. So I had those in my Ranger, and I never broke even the stock shafts. Well, I did break a couple stock shafts, but not when I upgraded to the 1550 U joints.
Okay.
They were non-chromos, and they held up really well. I broke a few transfer cases instead of shafts at that point. So
shafts don't seem so bad when you're breaking transfer cases.
Absolutely.
And then you mentioned you used rough stuff parts for your 3-link in the front. Is it linked in the back, or what are you running for rear suspension?
So the rear has custom Alcan leaf pack that were based off of an Explorer Dimensions springs. I had pretty good luck with stock Explorer springs on some of my earlier budget builds, the B2 and the Ranger and my first Explorer. So I had Alcan custom make a pack to get a little better ride and a lot better quality than stock. Junkyard replacements are nice, but I got a little over 3 years out of these Alcans before I put a slight bend in one at King of the Hammers on a Save It line, kind of about to go over and jam reverse and into a rock. But that was, driver error. For ride height, since it's so tall, I did slider boxes on the rear from Liquid Iron Industries, so it doesn't have any shackles. Kept the center of gravity lower, it's pretty stable. And then we packaged some 12-inch Raptor triple bypasses, 3.0 Kings in there. So you don't know what you have until you have it, because it rides pretty good for a 7,000-pound truck.
Nice. Shift?
Yeah, that wasn't good. So I just feel like first is probably not enough though.
Gotta bump it sometimes.
Yep, and with the leaf springs, that's my only downfall, is probably getting some axle wrap right there. I've spit out some drive shafts, not in this rig, but all my other ones.
Yeah.
So.
And I personally like the concept of like having a 3-link or linked in the front, but then leaf springs, in addition to being budget, in my opinion, I mean, they offer a lot of sway control, especially with those slider boxes. So, you don't really need, I don't know if you're running a sway bar or not, but I don't feel like you need one. It has a lot of sway control and the packaging is good and they still ride good on the road.
Yeah, I actually have no complaints with them. I was able to keep the factory fuel tank where it's at. I can cruise down the highway at 60, 70 miles an hour, and it's, like you said, stable, no sway bars. So I'm really happy with the leafs in the rear.
And then what about the armor on this? I mean, you can't just call up ARB and order a bull bar for a Sport Trac. So what did you do? I know you've got an exo cage and sliders and custom bumpers.
Yeah, so that's where most of the custom fab work comes in. You know, you can call Trail Gear and get your Toyota stuff, or Poison Spider and get your Jeep stuff. Nobody offers anything for most Fords, especially these. So the tube work was all just done in my shop at home. Me and you know, Lance helps me with all my projects. So we did the exo cage, actually learned from my past rigs. On my Explorer, I wheeled it for a while and then did the exo cage, so it's already super tall, and we were doing it on ladders. So we did this thing stock height before we even did suspension or anything. Took the wheels off, set it on the ground, exo caged it so it's at eye level.
Nice.
And then yeah, the sliders I actually found on the discount rack at Summit Racing. They were for an FJ Cruiser. Oh. I of course had to cut and lengthen them because they're almost 80 inches long now, but I did the exo cage, the bumpers. My buddy Jesse has a plasma table. He took a few measurements. It was pretty amazing. Took a few measurements of the truck. I went home a week later. He called me and said, your bumpers are done. They were tacked together. Me and Lance welded them together, put them on the truck. They fit great. The winch plate is kind of individual. There's a winch plate that cradles under in between the frame rails, and the bumper can bolt off with the winch staying in.
Oh, nice.
So that's pretty nice. And yeah, it's all just homemade stuff, trying to get creative and figure it out.
Well, yeah, I think you aren't afraid to jump in with both feet, which definitely helps, and having some friends that are willing to help and learning along the way. I know you've applied a lot of what you've learned on your past rigs to this one.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like you and Lance Morgan are always together, always fabricating on something, working on something, another project. You guys crank out rigs and get them built way faster than anyone I've ever seen. It seems like every night after work you're working on stuff.
Yeah, and he's helped me with everything that I've learned along the way. When I started, my knowledge was, you know, in high school I had a couple of first-gen Toyotas that we'd take the doors off, body lift, and come out here and wheel what we thought was wheeling back then. But I really had no knowledge of actually building a rig from scratch, and Lance has helped me a ton over the years with that. So yeah, this one was actually a super big crunch to get it finished before Moab. It was a total of 5 weeks in my garage, from a two-wheel drive stock truck to what it is now. So it was quick working.
So Mitch, what was the purchase price on this?
The Sport Tracs go for around $5,000. The V8 ones, the V6 ones can be found for less, but they have worse trannies and not as stiff a frame, fully boxed. These ones are a lot better starting platforms.
So I mean, I feel like you can't even get a YJ for that price. Right. Much less a new Jeep.
Yeah, not this day and age. And a comparable truck would be like a crew cab Tacoma or something, and all day long stock, they're you know, $10,000, $11,000. This one only has 100,000 miles on it when I picked it up. So a Tacoma with 100,000 miles would be significantly more expensive as a starting point.
So would you recommend somebody else to build a Sport Trac then?
I've seen a couple of them popping up. Most of them are the cheaper old first gen ones, but if you're able to do all the work yourself, then go for it. Yeah, it's a great platform. It's just a lot more work if you don't have the tools and the know-how to completely do everything yourself. Like we talked about, the bumpers, the roll cage, sliders, 3 links, coilover mounts, everything. I would maybe recommend you know, a Jeep, a Toyota. You can buy the bolt-on parts. If you're going to pay somebody else to do it for you, that's probably where you're going to save a lot of money than doing custom one-off stuff, because frankly, if you're to take a truck like this to a shop and say make it this, it would probably be twice the cost of bolting on a lift and some suspension products that are off the shelf. So
sure, that makes sense. No, I always think it's funny with friends that have shops, fabrication shops, and someone will come in and say, this ARB bull bar is too expensive, can you make me a bumper? And it's like, why do you think we can make you a one-off one that's going to cost less than this production part?
The one-off fabricating is so expensive and time-consuming and skilled, and the tools aren't cheap, and it's a lot of work. People generally don't understand that. You know, I have even buddies, hey, can you just bend me a bumper today real quick? And you know, I can, but it's quite a few hours and a couple $100 of material and tube. Like, if you have the option, 100% of the time it's going to be cheaper to buy one off the shelf from Trail Gear or Smitty Build or something like that than have one custom made. So
do you think that this Sport Trac is cooler than a JL? I do, but maybe I'm biased. Comment below and let us know what you think.